Welcome to Faith, Reason, and Geekdom. I'm Roger. This is part 2 of a 2-episode arc series starting with episode 37, Does God Believe in Aliens and Should We? Obviously, with the very ironic title, we know God is creator, and aliens, if they exist, would be creatures. So obviously you guys get the little pun, you guys get the ironic title. But this is the second part, the final of the 2-parter episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a 5-star rating. God bless.
What was the whole deal, or from your point of view, given your background, what was the whole deal behind Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos hanging out in space for however short of a time of it was? I thought it was like publicity, but given COVID, Amazon doesn't need publicity because that's everyone's like grocery store now and everyone's go-to. But so to me, that's kind of one of those random thoughts I have when I'm folding towels or, driving somewhere, sitting at a red light. It's like, what was the deal with those guys just trying to get to space? They just came out of nowhere and then it's forgotten.
So yeah, that was the joke when they did the Red Bull high altitude balloon skydiving from over 100,000 feet. What does it mean when a sports drink has a better space program than your country? So there's a lot to unpack here, so I'll try and keep it cogent. Kick me under the table if I get off track here. So first of all, the question is, where were we going when we started space exploration? So the Soviet Union launched a satellite that demonstrated the ability to even attack the United States via an intercontinental ballistic missile. So that necessitated a military response. Space started as an inherently military endeavor because it provided an advantage to whichever nation could execute those operations. So as we went on, there was a curious turning point where the Soviet Union wasn't able to keep up, and certain things happened. Nobody really thinks about what the impact is of the first pictures that have the entire Earth set against space. So as you go, I've attended a few lectures by different folks, but one of them was Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he talks about that moment changed the world because everybody saw the Earth as a fixed thing in a greater scope. Because walking around every day, we don't think about that. So we kind of lost some of the momentum towards space exploration. Everybody knows the Soviet Union kind of ran out of gas, right? And then we'd made it to the moon, we started doing the space shuttle, which really only goes to a low Earth orbit. If the Earth is a peach, the space shuttle only goes to the fuzz. So you're doing things that are orbital, but they're not really that big. So what's going on with all these corporations doing space launches? So this is, again, stolen from somebody else's presentation. So I'll give citation in person if anybody'd like it. But the idea is we've put so many satellites into orbit at the low Earth level, medium Earth orbit for all of your GPS satellites and a few other applications, and out clear at geosynchronous, the point at which the satellite's revolving around the Earth at the same rate we rotate. That's your things like your TV stations and your satellite communications, where you can point a dish and just leave it. We've done that so many times that a corporation, going over to Dusty, can understand the risk. I'm investing $100 million. My return is going to be X. The risk of a failure at launch is this value. The risk of failure at transfer, meaning getting it from low Earth orbit all the way out to geo, is this. And then the risk of engineering checkout is this. So we kind of stalled. We stopped doing the military side of space because we've perfected intercontinental ballistic missiles. We've perfected a lot of things. So what nobody realizes is there was so much technology available that they've essentially gobbled up a lot of technology and testing that's been done and simplified it into a business model, and they're now executing launch, or what they call lift. So space lift is occurring. We can make it look cool. We can send up multi-billionaires into orbit, but it's all just to demonstrate that they've mastered the risk of that initial space launch. So where things get complicated, though, is there's only one of them that claims we're going to move to Mars, right?
Right.
So, has anybody here listened much to astronauts or kind of what the impacts of spaceflight are on the human body?
All the time. All the time. No.
So, one of the astronauts, and I don't have his name, don't tell anyone, I was listening to NPR. No, it wasn't Buzz Aldrin. I was listening to NPR. It was somebody who was on the space station for, I think, 4 months or 6 months. But what he described was when he returned to Earth, he had to wear a compression stocking all the way up to his chest because his body could no longer circulate the blood, and that he was in agonizing pain every step he took because all of the nerve endings in his feet were so inflamed. So, that's kind of what we're going to see is when you start looking at things beyond geo, you'll probably see a return to military-related missions going back to the moon and beyond the moon.
Wow.
That is an unsanctioned opinion of an individual who happens to live in Texas.
Of those 144, 18 of them reportedly appear to exhibit unusual flight characteristics, appear to demonstrate advanced technology, and some of them appeared to remain stationary in winds aloft, move against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. That's pretty intriguing. And if you're able to answer this in this setting, are we aware of any foreign adversary capable of moving objects without any discernible means of propulsion?
I think I would, without discernible means of propulsion, I would say that we're not aware of any adversary that can move an object without discernible means of propulsion. The question then becomes, in many of these cases where we don't have a discernible mean of propulsion in the data that we have, in some cases there is likely sensor artifacts that may be hiding some of that. There's certainly some degree of something that looks like signature management that we have seen from some of these UAP, but I would caution. I would simply say that there are a number of events in which we do not have an explanation. And there are a small handful in which there are flight characteristics or signature management that we can't explain with the data that we have. We'll continue. Those are obviously the ones that are of most interest to us. Earlier, when we asked about how you avoid technological surprise, the biggest way you avoid technological surprise is by collecting this type of data and by, importantly, calibrating the assumptions that you go into with how you do that analysis. I'll tell you, within the UAP task force, we have one basic assumption, and that is that generally speaking, our sensors operate as designed. And we make that assumption because many times these are multi-sensor collections. We make no assumptions about the origin of this or that there may or may not be some sort of technology that we don't understand. That's, I think, the key to avoiding technological surprises by calibrating those assumptions.
I think it is true. It would be the military, something like that. And the thing about it is in his hearing, you never know. It could be something that we might have to defend ourselves. Or again, they were saying that the whole reason to put this on was because they said, hey, this might be a threat to national security. And again, the U.S. Department behind the back or quietly tried to, in 2017, try to restart a program that was related to Project Blue Book. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. The Airborne Object Identification. Yeah, that group. I think there was a show about it too. But this is... Yeah, but look, this is from the Congressman Andre Carson, who's a Democrat from Indiana. He's a chairman of the House Intelligence Counterterrorism. Quote, "Today we will bring the organizations out of the shadows. This hearing and the oversight work has a simple idea at its core. Unidentified aerial phenomenon are a potential national security threat, and they need to be treated that way." And this is other things came out too. A database, a report of UFOs includes over 400 incidents in the military's 2021 report. That they did say there has been no official evidence of aliens have been found. But this is crazy that Scott Bray, he's the deputy director of naval intelligence, was telling the lawmakers that they haven't recovered anything official that's alien or something that's even non-terrestrial in origin. It could be, again, foreign
As we detailed in both the unclassified and classified versions of the preliminary assessment released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence last June, this often limited amount of high-quality data and reporting hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAP. As detailed in the ODNI report, if and when individual UAP incidents are resolved, they likely fall into one of 5 potential explanatory categories: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. government or U.S. industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, or a other bin that allows for a holding bin of difficult cases and for the possibility of surprise and potential scientific discovery. Let me show you a couple of another video and image taken years apart in different areas. In this video, U.S. Navy personnel recorded what appears to be triangles, some flashing, recorded several years ago, off the coast of the United States. This was recorded while the U.S. Navy ship observed a number of small unmanned aerial systems in the area. And importantly, the video was taken through night vision goggles with a single lens reflex camera. These remained unresolved for several years.
Foreign countries, but it's unexplained right now. But the thing about it is, we do need to take it seriously. Okay, but what if they're like
right? Yes,
very
I'd like the aliens, please.
Yes, take a aliens for 500. But what have you seen Independence Day? I just want to say that. Have you not seen Independence Day? They get real proby. They like I don't know. I don't know. They blow up. They blow up the
calm
Capitol
down on the proby talk here, please. Jeez.
Independence Day. Have you not seen it?
Yes, I saw it in the theater.
Nice.
And you know what though? That was a movie. That was for entertainment.
Okay, the movie
it could
guy,
be
the
worse,
movie
right?
producer.
It could be worse. Who knows? Who knows? It could be worse.
Do you
could
think,
be just that.
Now, here's a theory. Speaking of, you guys were talking about Art Bell. Here's a theory I heard, and maybe Dusty, you can speak on this more, being in the Hollywood and producing movies and doing all that.
I know Dean Devlin. I actually hung out with Dean Devlin, who produced Independence Day.
Really?
He was as much of a geek and as a nerd as we were. You're going to laugh when I tell you this. We met because we both belonged to a BBS service back then. Do you remember what BBS is?
Not the BBS.
The bulletin board service
yes,
that you would dial up with your 1200 baud modem or 300 baud modem.
Yes.
But anyway, that aside, here's the question. The question is, we as Catholics should be prepared to deal with this deck no matter which way it plays out, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say is the theory is that Hollywood or movies are getting us ready to. Have you heard that?
Yeah,
that they're
of course,
getting us ready.
They've been getting us ready since Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, to prepare us for that.
Right.
Is there
Spielberg was hired to produce this movie to prepare the way for the coming of the aliens. Well, certainly there would be an argument about that.
Do you see any of that?
See that? And those of us who listened to Art Bell all those years would know that this disclosure, we've been waiting for it. But again, just to try to keep things on a Catholic note here, the question was asked to a Jesuit priest once, would you be willing to baptize an alien? And the answer was only if she asked. So I think the question, let's put it this way. Let's not theorize anymore. Let's say that day has come. We are now in a world today, in theory, where we found out at one of these disclosure meetings in Congress that, yes, there are aliens. How do we react to that? What happens to us as a human race when we are shown proof, 100% proof that there is an alien or an alien life form or an alien technology? What's to say that they're, maybe they show up as AI? Who knows, right?
I think Pope Francis and Pope Benedict have talked on this issue of if there is intelligence, if there is intelligence out there in the universe, we don't know. Like, are they fallen? Are they not? Did Jesus come just for us humans or for the whole universe? I don't know what's bigger, universe or galaxy, but did he come for everyone? Or maybe they're not fallen. I've heard that theory from a theologian is like, well, maybe these aliens aren't fallen, and the Bible, that plan is for us only. I'm not saying there's other multiple Jesus, but like, what if there's like, not their version of Jesus, but like, if they have a different route, like maybe
in other words, if they had like an alien version of Jesus, because look, even when you look at the apparitions
like
of
really
Mary, right? She seems to show up as the color of that culture.
Yeah,
in the Americas, she showed up as perhaps a Hispanic. Well, some people say, well, no, she was Jewish, clearly Jewish.
Yeah.
But in Europe, she shows up as a European woman.
Tell that to people in
like
Mexico.
There's a comfort level
Yes.
when you have somebody who is of your culture, of your race, of your appearance.
But it's the same Jesus. It's not like I'm not saying there's other multiple Jesus, but it's the same. But again, like you said, that's all I'm proposing. What do you think, Jason, on the faith of Catholicism? Like, if there were aliens, like, are they fallen? Like, what do you? I don't know.
Good question, and I don't know either.
You're supposed to know. That's why we have you on there. You're
That's
supposed
why
to
I'm
give us
sitting in front
the
of this
answers of the
microphone.
deepest, greatest universe. You're supposed to know all that.
Yeah, so for that, I hate to do this, Roger, but I'd probably refer someone to another podcast.
How dare you? How dare you?
The cardinal sin, but
Stand by for a paid
But I'm
announcement.
really curious what Tom thinks, because not only does Tom work for this, what did we say,
Shadowy
government entity that is
less shadowy
in
than you
between
could
the
have-
cracks
It is
somewhere.
less shadowy than
But
you
I
could
also
ever
know
imagine.
Tom to be a pretty cool Catholic guy who knows a lot about our faith. Where do you stand on this issue? Are
How do
we
you
ready?
reconcile
Are we
that?
ready? How do we deal with a world like that?
I guess you'd have to look at it, and we go to the biggest thing is, how do you even approach somebody who's different? We have enough problems dealing with each other in North America who are all humans. We have problems dealing with folks from other countries, other religions. So how, if you aren't capable to set down, one of my jobs I've had in the past is I was a military advisor, and I've worked extensively from folks from Middle Eastern countries. How many folks can say they've even gone to a synagogue or a mosque and just sat down? So that would be my question back to everyone else would be, if you haven't expanded your exposure to the rest of our human culture and our brothers and sisters around the globe in a truly Catholic perspective as the universal church, even to sit and understand what they think and their belief system and just part of their day-to-day life, maybe you're not ready to talk to someone who may not have a belly button.
That's an interesting point there, Tom. I've been blessed to work alongside seminarians within various ministries that I've helped with in my parish. And when you said what you just said, it sparked a light bulb in my brain. One of the few I have left here, that it fired off a memory. And I remember talking to a seminarian and say, "Hey, what are you doing later on? Let's go grab lunch." He said, "Go, I can't. I'm going to go to a Seventh-day Adventist service." And I was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, well, it's actually a part of our formation that we go and attend, other faith services." So I was like, "That's interesting." Talking about approaching someone or being approached by someone, right, who's different than you, and they could look like you, but they could have very different beliefs, and that makes them different.
And that is one of the oddities of, we're in a particular cultural spot that's San Antonio.
Right.
So once you've been here, I've only been here about 3 years, but I think I'm starting to figure some things out about San Antonio.
Oh, my.
You can tell who's from here and who's not.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
big time.
You can tell who's not from San Antonio. But as you take folks out of that one place and put them in a military setting, it's always the fact that you wind up putting a group of people from other cultures, other religions, other backgrounds. One of the stories I always tell is my first thing I did as a cadet, I went to ROTC basic camp because I couldn't cut it in real basic training. So I went to basic camp at Fort Knox. My platoon of 40 people had like 14 people from Guam. Statistically, not really a representative sample, but over the course of 7 weeks, I learned a lot about Guam. And I learned to appreciate that culture and kind of how everybody, folks would stop by. Everybody knew somebody's cousin. It was a very inclusive culture. You move out into what's San Antonio. San Antonio, everybody's got a cousin who does whatever it is you need. And you hear this word, pachanga. What is this pachanga?
Y los Spurs. You like the Spurs?
So it's just as you move through all those things,
The
and
two
I
S's there. Spurs.
was in this situation where, as a military advisor, your life literally depended upon, in my situation, the Iraqi army.
Allah.
So how are you going to, interact with them on Thursday, Friday? What's different during Ramadan? If you can't even smoke, have water, or eat during the entire day,
fasting.
that's a profound period of fasting. Now, granted, it's a great dinner after the sun goes down, but that level of understanding somebody else's culture, if, let's say, we're visited by extraterrestrial life, how do we present ourselves in the best light and establish a meaningful relationship? That would be my question. Because I don't think you could make a declaration of faith or a judgment until you had
I remember
some
reading
cultural
about
facts.
the Caesars of Rome and how when they were conquering countries, like there had to be a point where sometimes they would take a break to go and conquer the next country because, they were our previous allies or they were our friends, or how are we going to go take over their territory? So they would wait sometimes a generation, right? I think that's what may happen if all of a sudden we get disclosed. Is there going to be some people who have a very difficult time, and we may just have to wait. And we may have to get a sensibility, a growth of our limited little pea mind that we have. The other day, talking about culture in San Antonio, I'm driving around, and this is a city I grew up in until I was 19 years old, and I went off to college or whatever. But we're driving around the east side, and it's in the shadows of the Alamo Dome, right, which I've been to many, many times. I find, as we're driving around, a Confederate cemetery. And a Confederate flag flying full mast in this cemetery that has been set aside for not only a Confederate group, but also there was a lot of Masons there. There was a group called the Pythians, the Knights of the Pythians, I believe it was called. And as I started to research this is the Fraternal Order of the Knights of the Pythias. It promotes cooperation and friendship between people of goodwill. It promotes being of service to mankind. It promotes friendship as an essential ingredient to life. Benevolence, kindness, generosity, tolerance in their lives. I thought, wow, these guys are pretty cool, right?
Sounds like a cult. I was going to say, it sounds like a cult.
Okay, so that's interesting you say that, because I thought, how could a group that sounds so cool be on the X list for the Catholic Church, which it was. You are not allowed to be a Catholic and be a member of the Pythians. I would argue that there was, or a Mason, these secret societies. And I'm thinking to myself, God, there's a lot of people here who are buried in this cemetery. And there was like at least 900 plots there, right? Beautiful cemetery. Very old. Like you're looking at plots at places and headstones that were dating to the 1800s. They're easy, and it's really fascinating. Like I loved it, and I'm sitting there walking through the cemetery like a good Catholic, praying for their souls, right? And just sort of admiring the culture and, like you said, the differences, right? What have we learned since having a Confederate army and all these people that fought for keeping slavery, right?
Can we go down a very distinctly complicated question road?
Sure.
So here's one for you. Folks here are from Texas, a Confederate state. I'm from Kansas. The entire state's identity is tied to being anti-slavery, and being a fact of statehood drove the actual Civil War in the United States of America. So you probably didn't learn a lot about John Brown in grade school, going to school in Texas, but he was a cultural figure that's really an icon of the abolitionist movement in Kansas. He's, if you ever seen the Kansas album cover,
oh yeah,
that's
sure.
actually a mural. Yeah, that's actually a mural in the state capitol.
Wow.
But he was tried and convicted of treason for leading an armed rebellion against the United States of America.
Wow.
So where does he fit into, if you're going through and talking about things that we shouldn't remind people of, shouldn't be a part of our culture, can somebody who's convicted of treason be an example of what's right? Because by definition, they were found guilty, and he did commit treason, and he was hanged to death.
But
it's kind of complicated as you pull all these things apart,
it
and then
is.
apply it back to extraterrestrial life.
It's also been reported that there have been UAP observed and interacting with and flying over sensitive military facilities, particularly, and not just ranges, but some facilities housing our strategic nuclear forces. One such incident allegedly occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base, in which 10 of our nuclear ICBMs were rendered inoperable. At the same time, a glowing red orb was observed overhead. I'm not commenting on the accuracy of this. I'm simply asking you whether you're aware of it and whether you have any comment on the accuracy of that report.
Let me pass that to Mr. Bray. If you've been looking at UAPs over the last 3 years.
That data is not within the holdings of the UAP task force.
Okay, but are you aware of the report, or that the data exists somewhere?
I have heard stories. I have not seen the official data on that.
So you've just seen informal stories, no official assessment that you've done or exists within DoD that you're aware of regarding the Malmstrom incident?
All I can speak to is what's within my cognizance of the UAP task force, and we have not looked at that incident.
Well, I would say, it's a pretty high-profile incident. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but that's out there. You're the guys investigating it. I mean, who else is doing it?
How do we then not infringe on each other out of paranoia?
Is your mind changed, Jason? Do we change your mind now? I'm just like,
Change my mind in regards
on the extraterrestrial versus
whether
Russia,
you want it to be
China,
extraterrestrial military.
or you're still like, no, I'm gonna stick with my
I'll stick with my answer. It's
I think I will
That's
too,
interesting.
because I think
I don't know.
yeah.
if my faith tells me that God created,
unless I'm misunderstanding the question.
no. I think I'm going to stick with Jason too, because I think if my faith tells me that God created everything, do we find out that that's not true? I don't know, but it would certainly open up a whole new realm of possibilities. And by the way, why aren't you allowed to be part of the Masons or the Knights of Pythias?
The Masons are expressly...
This is actually in our canon law, by the way.
The Masons are expressly
Anti-Catholic.
founded by, I believe it was Voltaire, correct?
Something that I know Voltaire has something to do with them.
I think
they actively have their what do they call lodges near Catholic churches, active
They have
on
rituals.
purpose.
Going back to the actual root of it, the purpose in France was to overturn the altar of every Catholic church.
Wasn't it? They were friends with the Illuminati, the real one, not the Dan Brown, the what's
version,
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks running through the streets and we got to find this, and he's falling over. But yeah,
That's
anyway, but
fascinating.
that's another topic. But I want to kind of close this topic because we can go on for another hour.
We easily could.
So what
yeah,
if
easily.
what if
they're Masons?
UFOs are
The Illuminatis.
heavy, man.
What if they're knights?
Hey,
of the,
before you
What are
close
they
this,
out?
let me tell you something. When I was a teenager, I had a cousin who lived in Seguin, one of these old towns around here, and she lived near a power plant, CPS or whatever it was at the time, right? And she went out there with her video camera, and these video cameras were horrible. The little things would burn in at any light, and she videotaped and showed us, and we were freaking out. These things that look like flares, but they would look, I guess, today more like. These things that you fly up that you
Drones.
the drones. Thank you. Yeah, they were lights. They were little bits of light, and they were all going around. There was 3 or 4 of them going around and around the power station.
Wow!
And then all of a sudden, boom! In an instant, they all shot up, met up together, and then took off at light speed. And this was not fake. This was my cousin who showed us this video. It ended up, I think, on one of the newscasts.
I was going to say that
eventually.
she has to have.
But what jumps out at me as I look at these UAV videos, which is our topic today, right? We're seeing these amazing technology. Shoot, we're having pilots testify that they're interacting with these things every day. That's pretty amazing. And that we're seeing, if these are armed, manned craft, you wouldn't be able to survive the G-forces. Talk about, space,
the way
they move, right?
They would just liquefy.
I mean,
Going back to my references to sports drinks, Red Bull Air Racing has a max G factor of 10 because I think that's it, because that's the most humans can reliably survive. So
Right.
you get penalized in the race if you exceed. I can't remember whether it's 7 or 10, but so there's some interesting discussions to be had.
There definitely is, and I
how and
think
what.
whether they're alien or not, we are at a different place. We are at a different place. I saw it with my own eyes on that videotape. My cousin told us what she saw.
That's freaky.
And this is, 20, 30 years ago, 30 years ago at least, when we first saw these videos. And I'm telling you, it was blowing our mind, and now to see it on the headlines being talked about.
Let me ask you if this blows your mind. Everybody here has been alive long enough. We watch this space shuttle take off, and it goes up, and things fall off, and they come back down to Earth because gravity. Did anybody predict that Elon Musk would be able to take a rocket, launch the first stage, and return the first stage to a landing pad? In total Marvin Martian, Bugs Bunny fashion, we're going to reliably reuse the first stage.
No, we were told that was the reason why they came up with the space shuttle to begin with.
Correct. And if you look at what they're doing with then down in Brownsville, Starship, it flies up, it does a big belly flop, glides back down, and lands. Yeah. So that's an example of technology. The data has been there. There's nothing really revolutionary about what he's doing. It's how he's recombining existing technologies and data.
I think it's interesting that Tom, of all people, brings this up. Are you trying to tell us
whenever
something?
you say his name, you should do this.
Nope. I'm trying to ask you, though, how challenged would you have been if you saw that prior to just the news coverage and the expectation, the build-up? Right. So what happens when it turns out, fill in the blank, some other nation has an exquisite capability that I don't know about that. I don't know if it's us. I'm just saying technology is complicated, and
the limits we really don't know is what you're kind of saying.
So and it's just one of those things.
We might actually see some really interesting things doing your job that might blow our minds. I think one time at an airport, actually, I used to work at Avis Rent-A-Car as a kid when I was in college. And we used to get these late night flights that would come in to rent a car. The flights that were not registered off of, airliners, but private jets, military jets sometimes. The guy would come in and rent a car. This guy shows up one day, and he's got a voucher that he's going to pay with to rent the car. And it was from the Department of Defense, and it was specifically from Naval Intelligence. And I said, being the geek that I am, wow, you must see like really cool stuff doing this job, right? This is like 18-year-old version, 19-year-old version of me. And he says, let me tell you something. If you knew the things that existed out there that I see every day, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So, Tom, how well do you sleep?
Yeah, how well do you? I don't think
so.
You sleep
we talked a little bit about sleep earlier on, and I mentioned the fact that, different jobs I've had, different things I've done, that 4 hours of sleep a night sometimes is the standard. And so unwinding yourself from that can be hard due to hyper alertness. But the main thing, the best lesson I was ever told is there was a threat and it was a particular issue. We're working real hard on it. And one of my mentors was a Navy pilot. And we were sitting there working on the dry erase board trying to figure it out. He said, well, get up. Come here. I want to show you something. He took me out and we looked out across the rest of the office. He said, do you see this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, in every nation in the world, there's a group of people who aren't this good at what we do, trying to do the same thing. Wow. So that's just kind of one of the ones going back to heavy, deep thoughts that probably aren't, I don't know, we need somebody thinky-thoughty theologian on. But I think the factor that everybody misses about what makes the United States of America unique is the inherent tie to self-determination of the individual. And how, although it was not founded exclusively by Catholics, that's something we clearly hold dear to ourselves is the inherent right of self-determination, which we would also want for our alien friends.
Yeah. I think
I love that. That was deep and awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that's very deep. And
I assume we've never discharged any armaments against a UAP, correct?
That's correct.
How about wreckage? Have we come across any wreckage of any kind of object that has now been examined by you?
The UAP task force doesn't have any wreckage that isn't explainable, that isn't consistent with being of terrestrial origin.
Do we have any sensors underwater to detect on submerged UAPs? Anything that is in the ocean or in the seas.
So I think that would be more appropriately addressed in closed session, sir.
Okay.
All right. With that, I want to thank you all for taking the time out. I also want to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for participating in this very historical and important hearing. I think it's one of the few times we can demonstrate some degree of bipartisanship around UAPs and UFOs. So I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The closing thing of like this thing that's happening in our world and presently, there's so much stuff going on, and for the commission to have again after 50 years, I think it's amazing. I think we're going to see new stuff. I don't think it's done. I don't think the story's done yet of this UFO.
So wait, you're promising a future broadcast?
I'm promising
when we have a new development.
I'm telling you, we're going to have a new development. Quote my words, or wait, no, mark my words. What does I quote? All right, but let's get
So should we let everybody into the mystery of how this decision to be on this show was made? It's expressly tied to, this is a media presentation. This is all tied back to Fulton Sheen.
Yes.
So, folks, if
everyone here,
you're really looking back to like, hey, where's the real starting point? Gonna let you know. You can probably find it on the YouTubes as a presentation from Fulton Sheen that deals with the topic you're looking at. And it's a really good starting point.
That was like the original podcast, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it really was.
Sitting in his living room with the monstrous nearby with a microphone.
But who watched it? The question to you is, who watched it? And the answer was everyone.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
That is cool.
Just think about
I'm
that.
not worthy. I'm not worthy.
Yeah. So I'm going to go around and let's give our closing thoughts and end this show. Jason, again, thank you for being on the show. It's always a good time when you're on. Any closing thoughts in general of the show, and just say your goodbyes and your plugs and all that. The plugs and the shout outs and all that stuff.
Sure. So the one plug that I will give, something that Tom just mentioned, right? Fulton Sheen. So if you are curious as far as to what we're talking about, you can go to theuniversalway.com, and that's the website for the Fulton Sheen Prayer Group Apostolate. Has all the lessons on there that we've all come to know each other, to listen to, and meet together as like-minded individuals. So I'll throw that out there as a plug. Once again, that's theuniversalway.com. Very, very easy to get a group going. It basically runs itself. Overall, Roger, thanks so much for inviting me to be on the show. I love podcasts. I work within podcast within my day-to-day, and it's also a hobby of mine and a real passion. So this is one of the last true media, honest art forms that there is right now. So thanks so much for having me on, and I appreciate it, and can't wait to be on again.
All right, thank you. Oh, I almost said it again. Tom, sorry.
Said what again?
Any last takes, not last takes, shout outs, plugs? Obviously, no. You can't be like, follow me on Twitter, something.
Yeah.
Like at Tom dash something mystery man.
Tom on MySpace.
Well, I guess you're not gonna have any links to your Facebook or Twitter anytime. But any last thing you want to say?
Not exceptional. Just, hey, thanks for letting me be here. I'm just meeting Dusty. I know you two from around the neighborhood. Thanks for being good hosts. And just remember, San Antonio is a big place. New people. It's the Catholic Church. You are allowed to say hello to them. Mm-hmm. Say hello.
Is that in canon law, though?
I think we're supposed to be polite to each other.
What paragraph is that?
So thank you for welcoming us into the community, though. And my new tagline for San Antonio is, we've got tacos.
Oh,
so,
that's your last tagline. San Antonio tagline.
That's what I've got. So thank you all, and have a wonderful time.
All right, man. Thank you guys
for being with us.
Yeah.
My closing take comes from the Catholic Journal. This is a show we discussed UAVs and UFOs and aliens and the possibility that we're seeing new technologies and so forth. If these are aliens, the Catholic Journal article that I read said, do not be afraid. These should not be considered a threat to our faith as Catholics, as Christians, and even some of our Jewish forefathers. This is instead a reinforcement of our faith. And in this matter, as in countless others, our guiding thought should be the calming words mentioned no fewer than 105 times in the sacred scripture. Quote, do not be afraid, unquote.
Wow. Great. Well, once again, thank you guys for joining us. This has been Faith, Reason, and Geekdom. Check in every week. We're going to make the podcast go to another level. Again, I'm so glad to be on this journey. Thank you, everybody. Godspeed. God bless.